it's like race cars. There's a pace car there that's setting the pace before you go. So the pace cars are your other prospects. So therefore, if you have a pace car set, you can say, okay, this is maybe a grade down in opposition level, but I've still got a reputation to uphold. I've got to still hold up a certain pace. I've got to hold up a certain speed to the progression of my career. Look, I'm getting so excited, my earpiece is coming out.
Welcome into the Big Fight Breakdown here on ProBox TV. Download the ProBox TV app. Never fall behind in your boxing news. It's always the best when we do the Big Fight Breakdown about our own fights. That's right. Next week, October 16th, it goes down yet again at the ProBox Event Center in Tampa, Florida. Help me break it down in studio. It is Jimmy Smith alongside Paulie Malignaggi, Chris Algieri. It is a great card. Next Wednesday, let's take a look at it. Of course, our main event is going to be a great one. This is a fighter we talked to earlier. It was Chris Colbert, an interview with him and Omar Salcido, 19-1 versus 17-2 in our co-main event. Senbatar Erdenbot, the hard-hitting Mongolian Olympian, versus Frenzy Fortunato, who is 15-1. Naji Lopez versus Anthony Hernandez. Gentlemen, before I even get into the specifics, before we break down every fight, starting, of course, with the main event, this idea that ProBox over the last couple of months, we've had some fighters fight for world titles, we've had fighters win world titles. Of course, when you look at the stakes of ProBox, it's getting around. We work in the combat sports world, right? We're everywhere. I'm hearing a lot more, oh, you're with ProBox? Man, they got some great fights. Some of their fighters are really doing great things. It kind of ups the stakes for every one of these cards. You agree, Paulie?
I 100% agree. Yeah. It's not, and I think, you know, at first you just come off the gate, right? And you're trying to create your reputation. But now we're a couple of years into this experimental project where we're growing this network, and you're starting to see that not only are people entertained, but the quality of the fights has also spawned quality winners, and those winners have gotten quality opportunities. Some of them have gone back to or reached world-class level for the first time, and we're going to continue to try to keep growing this thing this way. And, you know, and when you see a card like this, which is, you know, next week's amazing card, it's one of those cards that you're looking at it and you're like, wow, like I could see, you know, this thing going in a lot of different directions, 50-50 type of fights, good fighters and great fights, but also the preparation these guys get, fighting one another, it elevates you to that being prepared for that world-class level. That's why we don't just get guys always at world-class level. Some of these guys get to world-class level and win, like we had Angel Leo.
Yeah, and when you look at it, when it comes to our main event, Chris, I got to ask you, when it comes to Chris Colbert, when it comes to world-class opposition, those are the only fighters who have beaten him. He has 2 losses in his career. Both the guys, world champions after they beat him. They've aged very, very well. What kind of confidence does that give him going into this fight?
Well, and literally immediately after beating him, they got world title fights and won. So, you know, he's only lost to 2 guys who are, you know, have been or you know, eventually became world champions. So you got to look at that. And I think at the time, you know, Chris is thinking, man, I want to be. He sees himself as world champion. He took those losses, certainly upset. But now when you look at it in hindsight, you're like, yeah, you know what? I am on that level. And to get back to that, I got to go through ProBox TV. And which is no easy out for anybody. You know, it's a tough place to come back off of a couple losses the way Colbert is. But, you know, he said, this is where I belong. I'm a world-class guy. I need to go out here and do what I need to do on this platform like you were talking about, Champ. You know, everyone knows now if you fight on ProBox TV, if you get a good quality win here, because every win here is quality because it's not easy. You know, you're going to get opportunities on other places because of the platform. And Colbert knows what the stakes are for this as well.
When you look at the Hector Garcia fight, which is one of the losses for Colbert, the first one of his career, he kind of succumbed a little bit to the physical pressure. He started wearing down a little bit. He has a good style where it comes to his defense, his counter-punching ability, but he can get worn down by physical pressure. Is that Salcido's key to victory in the main event for you?
I think it is the key to victory. I think that, you know, even the Rayo Valenzuela loss, you know, he was pushed back to the ropes. I think when you get Colbert going backwards consistently, you may be able to ruffle his feathers, so to speak, or give him a little bit of trouble. You know, Colbert, when he's boxing well, if he can get back to doing that, can be very world class. Before the loss to Garcia, he was actually in the conversation for the Gervonta Davis fight, and it's funny enough, Garcia winds up getting that fight. You know, so Colbert has that aura around him where if you can get the best of him, and we'll see if after a bad knockout loss, sometimes you never get the best of yourself again. That's why we're so curious about this fight. If you can get the best of him, you know, it can go in a lot of different directions because when he's fighting at his best, he was really the goods, but again, had the knockout loss against Valenzuela, how much does that change things, Because sometimes you see guys getting knocked out like that. I thought that was a knockout of the year contender, right? I mean, so I mean, sometimes you get knocked out like that and you're never the same again. His legs didn't look so steady even in that rematch. So we'll see. There's a lot to be answered. And that's why you come to ProBox TV. When there's questions to be asked of you, you suddenly get put in this position. Like, all right, well, either if you're a prospect, you want to see if you're the goods, come to ProBox TV. If you were at world-class level and you're dropping off, you know what? You got to go on ProBox TV. You got to improve your medal again, So right there, we're right at that cusp. And I think this is always the most fun level because fighters at this cusp are so hungry and determined, or they've just been there, they're coming back down, so they feel like they belong at a higher level again, so there's that chip on their shoulder. This is, again, why we have such good fights here.
Against Jose Nunez, that was on our air. Salcido brought a lot of physical pressure. When you watch that fight and you really break it down, Chris, the volume wasn't there. He was in Nunez's face a lot, but it was Nunez getting off with the punches. If you bring physical pressure, you kind of have to bring volume with it. Was that his mistake in that fight to you, Chris?
Well, I think also Nunez showed himself to be very, very tactical, in the way that he was throwing. And when I say tactical, I use that term because he was throwing big bombs from the outside, but he set them up well. He used his jab. He was a looping puncher with big shots we're seeing here on the graphics now, and he was very smart and tactical the way that he was able to explode in. He's a much smaller, much shorter guy, as you can see, but he was coming in with huge, big shots over and over again. I think he actually put Salcido down a few times. Yeah. Salcido showed a lot of heart, kept getting up, kept trying, but to your point, not a lot of volume, a little too slow-footed, a little too slow with the hands, which is why when you look at the Colbert matchup, man, there's a lot of things that Colbert can capitalize on. Listen, everybody pressured Colbert coming up. He was such a good boxer, you're not going to go jab for jab with him. A lot of guys had to come forward, could push, and pressure him, the way Hector Luis Garcia did in order to beat him, the way that Raya was able to do and beat him. But if he can go back to what he used to do with those kinds of punchers and those kind of guys who put that pressure and box and move and be slick and be smooth, there's a lot of things that he can capitalize on what Salcido does.
And did Colbert get a little bit lazy in getting away from that? Because you're looking at that fight there with Nunez. You got a big pressure fighter in Salcido, and there's different ways to skin a cat. You offset pressure by giving different looks, punching off those different looks. Throwing different punches, varying yourself to where the pressure's coming, but it's always a little bit off balance because it doesn't know what to expect. And what happens? A guy like Salcido wasn't getting off enough punches. Colbert has that in him. Yes. But. In that last fight with Valenzuela, you're like, where is it?
He put himself right to the ropes in that
where
fight.
is it? There was no creativity.
But also, they had a lot of back and forth before that fight, talking about betting their purses and this and that, and making side bets and whatnot. So there was a lot of personal stuff in there, and potentially, Colbert saw that as like, I got to go beat this guy, which is not his style. If he gets back to his style, where he boxes and moves, he's a problem for anybody in the world.
When you look at our co-main event, it's one of those fighters. I'm reminded of Lamont Roach Jr., another fighter who's appeared on ProBox TV, another world champion, is getting a great opportunity end of the year against Gervonta Davis. I remember him saying, I don't necessarily knock you out, but don't let the numbers fool you. I hurt you when I step in there. When I throw, I hurt guys. So don't always knock them out, but I hurt them, and you feel it. When you look at our co-main event, that's immediately what springs to mind when it comes to Senbatar Erdenbot. 10-0, only 5 knockouts, but Paulie, I think it's beyond the numbers. He hurts guys when he throws punches.
Now, Erdenbot has some hurtful shots. Even if you gotta get knockouts, you can see that thump, the whip, the snap on those shots. He's aggressive with them too. He doesn't pitter-patter or he's not looking to waste any time on you. He sets them up nicely. He's creative. He's been a world-class amateur. I think he was in the Olympics as well from Mongolia. He's a big star in Mongolia. He gets a lot of views, man. He's a guy who you can build as an Asian star. I know, you're thinking like, you think of Pacquiao, you think of Inoue. Dude, this guy gets crazy views, man. I mean, this guy gets a lot of views. There's a lot of popularity there that can be capitalized on if he's moved correctly. And he can fight. He's shown he can fight, and he's been very impressive when we've seen him here on ProBox. And I'm actually curious to see how far he can take this. Can he continue to take this seriously? I know he trains in California. You hear various things about his dedication, but if this kid can stay dedicated, I mean, this kid has a lot of talent, and sky's the limit because that popularity is insane.
When you look at it, Chris, a lot of people say when it came to the Mike Tyson years, he was short, he was stocky. I remember one of his opponents saying it's like trying to fight a fire hydrant. There's nothing to hit, right? When he shells up, there's not a lot of opportunity to hit the guy. Erdenbot has that same kind of build. There's just not a lot to hit. Is it frustrating for his opponents?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, because he's super explosive, similar to how Mike Tyson was. But, he's got a great gas tank, too, this kid. He's shown a freaking fantastic gas tank. But I want to go back to the point about the power.
Please.
He's fighting in the wrong weight class, and we knew that. He's not actually a 35-pounder. He fought a 37, he fought a 35. He's back at junior feather in this fight. So we're going to see him closer to where he actually belongs. He might even be a featherweight.
More dedication. He's got to make weight. You know what I mean?
He might even be a featherweight.
There's some issues. There's a little bit of issues because he's so good. He sort of takes it for granted. You know, like if he stays motivated and gets on the right path as far as choosing the right weight class for him and making those sacrifices. I'm telling you, there's a lot to work with this guy.
Yeah, and I think the power is actually there when he's fighting guys his size rather than guys that are 2 weight classes above him like he has been.
Because they're thumping off these bigger guys. He's not stopping
the hell out of these guys. Just not stopping.
When you look at Frenzy Fortunato, of course, his opponent 15-1. Is it about the boxing? Is it about the jab? Is it about keeping the stockier guy off you, Paulie? Is that the key?
Yeah, I think so. You know, you got to have a balanced attack. You got to have enough things to offset a guy like Tugstad or Erdenbot, who not only is a thudding puncher, like we said, but also himself has some crafty boxing. So you've got to have various things offset him. Franci Fortunato, it's like Frank is like, when it's spelled like that, it's Hungarian, and then Fortunato the Italian.
I love it.
Interesting, you know.
He's Dominican.
Is he Hungarian, Italian?
Totally off the
Out
tongue.
of the Dominican Republic, right? We're flowing everywhere. We're like United Nations over here.
But that pride, all right, we've seen that many times on ProBox TV. They are proud of the flag they bring in. Lester Martinez, of course, a pride of his country. This idea that I'm from Guatemala and I'm representing my country. Same thing, a lot of the Dominican fighters, Chris, they come out to bang.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. We had a ton of them on our air. But, in this fight in particular, why I find this particular matchup so intriguing, that man's got 11 KOs in 15 fights. Erdenbot gets hit, guys. Yes. So our matchmakers are so smart. They set up specific styles and fights, just kind of like how Top Rank builds their guys. We build them a lot tougher though. So he's got to get past someone who can really punch.
We prioritize entertainment.
Yes,
first.
we prioritize entertainment rather than getting the guy over the hump. So this is an interesting matchup because we got Erdenbot fighting at 130. He's fighting his weight class, but he's fighting a puncher, and he's been hit by some of these bigger guys. But some of those bigger guys weren't the big punchers. This guy is. So we're going to see if that chin holds up to the shots or if he gets really on his defense and his discipline, like you were talking about, Paulie, against a guy who's dangerous.
When it comes to Erdenbot, Paulie, you said, I want to see if he gets to the next level. I thought he could be that guy. Angelo Leo, of course, winning a world title this year. What do you look for when it comes to that? Like when you say, God, is this guy ready for that, those world title opportunities? What do you look for?
I look for the dedication and show me the right weight class, right? So that's we're checking that off this time around. Also, we'll continue.
Wait yet. We'll see.
Well, good point. But hey, he signed the contract for that weight class, right? But then also, you take on the level of opposition that keeps rising. This is a dangerous puncher he's taking on. It's at the better weight class for him, so his power could show more. But also this guy's power shows on his record as well. So it's a dynamite matchup. So, it's going to create curiosity. It's going to create excitement. And so you want to win fights where people start to anticipate and be curious about it. So that way when you win them, you get a lot of credit. The winners on ProBox TV get opportunities not just because they win on ProBox TV, but because the writers now in boxing, the fans now in boxing, are impressed when you win on ProBox TV. They realize it's not a gimme show like a lot of these gimme small prospect shows that a lot of these promoters put together. Yes, they're not showcase fights. So when you win on ProBox TV, you get your flowers from the media, you get your flowers from the fans, and you get rewarded with bigger opportunities a lot of times. So you got to keep moving in that direction if you're Tugstad, Erdenbot, and this would be that next level again. This is a fight that I'm curious about because Fortunato has that punching ability.
What I'm curious about, both of you guys, East Coast, New York boxers, you know about defending your turf in the gym, right? Bad boys come into all the gyms on the East Coast. Is it a similar thing when you look at a fighter like Najee Lopez, who has spent so much of his career in pro box? Do you get that sense, this is my turf, this is my home, I'm comfortable here, you got to come in here and beat me? Does he have that comfort level?
I actually don't. I think Najee's looking world class. I think Najee's looking for bigger, better things. I don't think he thinks about that particular room being his room, other than the fact that he would think about any room he's in it being his room because he's a dominant guy. He's a competitive guy. He sees himself at a much higher level, which I respect. It's exactly how I felt when I was younger. It wasn't so much about defending my hometown fights. It's just, hey, that's just the ring we're in. Whatever ring I'm in, I'm the man. So Najee has that air about him, especially lately. I believe he's really coming into his own. But in this fight in particular, this is an opponent unlike a lot of Najee's past opponents, lately he's been stepping up and finding some really dangerous guys. This guy is dangerous, but in a different way. He's more of a you need to impress against this guy, not just beat him. Yeah, you're supposed to beat this guy. He's only lost to undefeated fighters. He's got some power. He has 5 KOs in his 7 wins. But man, are you special? You got to show it by dominating, stopping, getting this guy out of there.
Does that provide too much pressure, Paulie, for a lot of up-and-coming fighters? As Chris says, you don't just want to win, you want to impress. If you're the coach, you want to bring those expectations down. Look, you want to win. If you can win impressively, great. What's your line when you're looking at a fight like this on the way up?
Your line is your fellow prospects. For me, when I was coming up the ladder, it was my fellow prospects. How are my fellow prospects being talked about, and how am I being talked about in regards to those names on the way up? I didn't want to compare myself yet to the champions if I wasn't at the championship level. I didn't want to compare myself to the contenders, but I wanted to start getting my name into the position where some contenders might be mentioned around my name so that I might be fighting them. But especially with my fellow prospects, hyped up prospects, and Najee is a hyped up prospect. People are high on him. I want my reputation to be the stud of those prospects, or at least among the elite of those prospects, where people talk about them in my weight class and say, you know what, that's one of the guys to watch in this weight class. I think Najee, the things to work on, he's very explosive. He's very adept at making people get in the eyes. He passes the eye test. He gets in there. He's offensively explosive. And right away, when you're watching him, you want to get on the edge of your seat because you're like, okay, this guy is dynamite right here. But at the same time, he's missing one key thing. He doesn't know how to disarm the bomb every once in a while. Every once in a while, you got to start throwing the bombs and creating that dynamic in that fight, and that makes it exciting. But you also have to know and understand the time, and there's a time to do it, and sometimes it's the time to attack. You can't not attack when it is time to attack. So he doesn't have that problem for sure. He loves to attack. But sometimes you got to understand when it's time to disarm the bomb, go back to what you do, what you also know how to do because you're talented enough to box and go back, and then start to arm the bomb again and put that in. You have to have that proper balance. At the highest level, the IQ makes a difference. A lot of guys have that talent. It's the IQ that gets you to the next level. Understanding when to do certain things and when not to do certain things.
It makes me think of like a Navy SEAL demolition team. If you can plant the bomb but not get out, it's not a good team.
Yeah.
You got to be able to plant the bomb and get out.
Yeah, the bomb will still go off.
The bomb's going to go off
The problem
either
is
way.
it'll take
Bomb's
you with
going
it.
off. Bomb's going off.
We saw that in Najee's. Was it his last fight when he was winning?
dropped, yep.
When he was winning well, but he ended up getting clipped and getting dropped. He got up. It was a flash knockdown. But again, it's part of the learning curve. You say, okay.
But that was my point about him in this fight in particular. It seemed like his last bunch of fights were all step-up fights. Step-up. He's fighting undefeated guys. He's fighting other prospects. This guy's not the same. So for me, this is a statement-type fight, not just get the win and move on. This is I got to look great.
An interesting thing that was said in the Lamont Roach fight that we called in D.C. We're sitting there with Showtime's Sean Porter, and Lamont Roach was landing big punches early in that fight. And I said, should he go back to boxing? And Chris, you remember what Showtime said? He goes, sometimes that's hard. Yeah. You try to go back to boxing, and you're kind of bound up from throwing big punches. It can be difficult to switch back.
That's the thing. I mean, in this case, I think that's the challenge. He's been in step-up fights, and now maybe it's not a step-up fight. But that's why, for me, everybody says, your battle is more within yourself than with other guys. No, I think when you compare yourself to the other prospects, it's like race cars. There's a pace car there that's setting the pace before you go. So the pace cars are your other prospects. So therefore, if you have a pace car set, you can say, okay, this is maybe a grade down in opposition level, but I've still got a reputation to uphold. I've got to still hold up a certain pace. I've got to hold up a certain speed to the progression of my career. Look, I'm getting so excited my earpiece is coming out. But no, seriously, This is what I'd like to see from Najee, and that's a way to keep motivating yourself. Make sure the pace car is something that is going to make you keep pace. Don't look at it like it's a step down, okay. No, because then you're not going to keep pace. You may get the win, but you're not going to keep pace.
The difference in this sport is you're not supposed to use the pace car. You're supposed to blow it away. That's the thing. The pace car is not where you want to get to. You want to blow it away, not like a race car driver. So that's what I'm looking for from Najee Lopez. I want him to blow this pace car away.
This current crop of fighters, as you guys say, the up-and-comers, the guys will be fighting for titles soon, it seems as though, I'm a little older than you guys, but in the 90s when we were fight fans or whatever, under 20 fights, it was pretty rare for somebody to get that world title opportunity, right? A lot of people considered anything under 20. Now we're seeing guys 12, 13, 14 fights. Terrence Crawford's last fight, Madrimov had, 10 fights? We're seeing those opportunities.
Eastern
Yeah,
Europeans.
yeah, but with the amateur background, sometimes it's earlier.
Because you're making a great point. You know, when Whitaker fought for a world title with 16 fights, it was a big deal.
That was a big deal back then.
But think about it. Whitaker was like your modern Russian. Roy Whitaker was an amateur world champion, Olympic gold medalist. I think he was a silver medalist at the Pan Am Games. Like he was. You know, Whitaker, bro, if you look at Whitaker's amateur career, he had a real big rivalry with this Cuban, was a special Cuban in that generation at that time, where Whitaker had lost I think the 82 World Amateur Championships. Then he beat him in the Pan Am Games, and then it was gonna be like a tiebreaker at the Olympic gold medal for the Olympic gold medal in '84, but the Cubans boycotted. You know, so it was like he was having rivalries with these super stud amateurs.
Huge.
You know,
they
from these communist countries. So
it was nothing new for him.
Yeah, so Whitaker, you know, he was basically your modern day Russian. He had so many amateur fights that, you could see, 16 fights. I mean, actually, by today, even that would still be a lot, right? Considering somebody's ass. But you weren't even surprised when he got the title shot. And they had to rob him because he was against Jose Luis Ramirez. That's when they robbed him. But nonetheless, you see more of that because now in the East, there's more of those Whitaker-X type of amateurs where there's so much there. But if you're a regular amateur or you're a pretty good amateur, dude, you can't go fight for titles after 5 fights.
But like time for me to toot my own horn real quick. My 20th boxing match, amateur and pro put together because I didn't have any amateur world title. 20th fight.
But this guy was kicking people's asses, literally kicking.
It was.
Kickboxing.
I had a bunch of those fights.
But the question is, Najee Lopez and his people, you got to be ready for the call. Maybe it'll be late notice, maybe somebody drops out, but even in this 12, 13 fight range, you got to be ready for the call in a way you didn't have to a few years ago. Is that fair or not, Chris?
Well, I think for Najee, it's going to be a kind of a cross-town, cross-promotional rivalry where he's going to have to go fight another one of their prospects. You're going to get that classic prospect versus prospect clash. I talk about this all the time. I make the same hand gestures and everything. One guy wins, one guy has to start over. It's going to be one of those fights. And listen, you're going to come in on the B side in those situations. And that's something that you need to get used to as well. Because usually when you get that opportunity for a title fight, you're on the B side anyway, so you got to get used to that.
And those are the kind of fights where that IQ, understanding when it's time to bomb and when it's time to disarm, is very, very important. Because then you're fighting guys that have sort of the same talent as you, the same skill level as you,
but also
that can do the same things.
Yes, they're stubborn.
They're stubborn
they don't
as well.
Know how to lose.
So if you don't want to give them a chance to set off their bombs all the time as well. So again, IQ is part of the progression. Super talent, super skills, you work on it. IQ is very important.
Don't forget, of course, as always, Tim Tszyu versus Brakan Murtazaliev. We're able to sit down, have a great interview, and talk with him. Don't miss their fight, of course. Bivol versus Beterbiev. So many great fights coming up. We'll have a sit down with that one as well. But for all your boxing news, right here, ProBox TV. Download the app. Never fall behind in your boxing news. Remember, our Wednesday night fight is switching to next week, the 16th. The reason, big hurricane hitting Florida. To all our people up north in Florida, stay safe, be careful. We'll see you on the other side.
Wednesday Night Fights.
Dynamite action on Wednesday Night Fights every other Wednesday on your boxing channel.
Coming up on your next Wednesday Night Fights, October 16th, Chris, Primetime, Colbert, and Omar Super Salcido step into the ring for what is sure to be a barn burner. Live from the ProBox Event Center in Plant City. Get your tickets at proboxtv.com or take your chances at the door. Wednesday Night Fights.
Boxing superstar Tim Tszyu is coming to Prime Video. Don't miss this championship showdown as Tszyu takes on undefeated Murtazaliev for the super welterweight world title. Saturday, October 19th, streaming live exclusively on Prime Video for all Prime members.
For more ProBox TV, scan the QR code on the screen or go to the App Store and Google Play. ProBox TV, your boxing channel.